to zone the leadership of the 10th National Assembly to the North Central region to bring a balance in the affairs of the country. The spokesperson for the coalition, Mr. Romanus Azubike, told journalists at a press conference in Abuja that neutrality of power is important for governance. Those are the political roundup stories for today. It's back to you, Sharon.
Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. So we're getting some responses now based on the petitions, about 5 now that we know, on the presidential election and the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal. The All Progressives Congress, APC, is now asking the Election Petition Tribunal to dismiss the petition filed by the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Mr. Peter Obi. APC faulted the petition on many grounds. It also challenged the court's jurisdiction to hear the petition on the grounds that it is, among others, incompetent. Among APC grounds for challenging the competence of the petition are that Mr. Obi was not a valid member of the Labour Party as at the time of the election. Well, on the other hand, because, you know, in all of these cases, INEC is usually joined in the suit because INEC is a party as the arbiter or as the mediator in that sense, as the umpire. So the Independent National Electoral Commission, in his own response, has said that electronic collation of election result is not mandatory. INEC says that this response to a petition by the Action People's Party is necessary before the Presidential Election Petition Court in Abuja. The APP has challenged the result of the 2023 presidential election, which declared the APC candidate Bola Tinubu as the winner on the grounds of alleged substantial non-compliance with the electoral laws of Nigeria, as well as the breach of INEC guidelines. INEC, through one of his lawyers, Mr. Abubakar Mahmood, senior advocate of Nigeria and a former president of the Nigerian Bar Association, has insisted that it conducted free and fair polls on the 25th of February. And these are the issues that have been brought before the commission, before the petition tribunal, which will commence sitting in earnest very soon in the coming days. Now, a lot of these issues have been brought up, which, of course, the ruling and the positions of the tribunal, and if it goes on to the Supreme Court, we have a far-reaching implication and lessons on our electoral process and, in fact, the electoral law. Let's get some perspectives on what these means, these petitions, without necessarily having to touch on what the honorable justices, the judges will be discussing or the lawyers will be arguing in court. But we're looking at some of the issues that have been raised by this matter. I have a very senior lawyer and also a very experienced official of the Independent National Electoral Commission. If I was a former, he is the former Director of Voter Education and Publicity at INEC, Mr. Oluwole Osaze Uzi. Thank you so much, Mr. Osaze Uzi. It's good to see you again. After the long...
It's been a while.
Yeah,
you keep saying Director
election.
of Voter Education. I was also Director of Legal Services.
You
have brought me here to
But that was your last... Well, that was your last assignment.
Not my first, but my last, yes.
Very much. It's good. I mean, your competence is not in doubt at all. And, respect to your years of service and experience. Thank you so much indeed for taking time out to do this with us. Well, as a lawyer, how would you describe this time in our political and electoral history?
Well, it is we live in interesting times. A lot of controversies were raised as a result of the conduct of the elections. Certain things were being, the revolution brought about by the change in law, in the injection of technology into the process, it's in the front burners. What is the effect of the deployment of technology? Don't forget that in 2015, the issues of the card reader, that was not the first time, but that was the time that it was at the forefront. So the card reader came in. What is the legality? What effect will they have if it's complied with? Then we had the Court of Appeal and the judgments of the tribunals, which went one way, but the Supreme Court, in its wisdom, went the other way about the deployment of the card reader, its use and its effect. Then came the Electoral Code 2022, and much more usage and injection of technology was brought into the process and into the legal regime. So things are new. Some of the cases that were binding on the courts and on the commission will no longer bind the commission because the law has changed. So with the changes in the law, what will be the position of compliance, non-compliance with those statutory provisions? Those are some of the issues being thrown up in these time as we go into the next phase. We've done the elections, we've done the pre-election, we've done the election stage. Now it's the post-election, is the dispute resolution mechanism by way of petition brought into the system by law. That's the stage we're at now.
It's an interesting stage, isn't it, very much? And there's a lot of pressure being put on the judiciary right now. Is it unexpected?
I wouldn't say so, but not just right now. The pressure started in the pre-election stage. I think we've been here a couple of times and we told you that the last count, if I remember correctly, more than 700 pre-election cases were filed in the Federal High Court, and almost all, without exception, went on to the Court of Appeal, and there's still quite a number pending in the Supreme Court. Some have been determined. There's still quite a number pending in the Supreme Court. And in between now, we've now have the election petitions. A lot of those ones dealt with pre-election issues, intra-party issues, arising mainly out of the primaries of the political parties. So it was intra-party between the political parties themselves. Now we've gotten to a stage where it is inter-party between the winning party, if you so use that word, and then those other parties that lost out in the election. And in all of these, whether pre-election or post-election, INEC is a party, mandatory party in all these proceedings.
I don't know. I think in 2011 or 2015, we saw maybe the highest number of petitions that came out of the presidential. I can't remember. But it does look to me that that scenario is playing out. You saw how many petitions in Lagos alone.
That's right.
And I'm not sure INEC has come out to announce how many petitions, 5 officially that we know on the presidential election, yes, against the victory of Bola Tinubu. I mean, what does the number of petitions and the challenge, of going to court, what is the implication on the electoral process? Does it have any implication? Well, does it say anything? Because there's those who argue that, look, I mean, when the process is smooth, foolproof of fraud and manipulation, there is a tendency that people will not challenge it.
That's one school of thought. And yes, a lot of people believe that the better, more credible election is the less likelihood that it will be challenged. There are those who believe so, and that may be so, but we don't have any scientific basis for putting that forward. But it's just a belief that a lot of people share. But it depends on the players, active players, and whether they feel wrongly done by what INEC has done or not done, as the case may be. And don't forget, INEC has not come up with a total number of petitions yet, because I don't think it knows. I don't think it has been said with all the petitions. And you have to remind viewers that these are the petitions arising out of the presidential and National Assembly elections. There's still time within which the state assembly elections will also come in, and I expect a deluge in that one, a lot more. And then there's still the governorship petitions as well. So yes, it's a busy time for the tribunals, it's a busy time for the courts. Court of Appeal sitting as the presidential tribunal, sitting to hear the presidential tribunal, full complement, and then the Supreme Court will also hear the presidential election petitions arising therefrom, and also the governorship elections will ultimately end up in the Supreme Court. All of that will stop in the National Assembly, and state assemblies will stop in the Court of Appeal.
Give us a sense of what stands out to you. I mean, let's look at the issues now that have been presented in some of these issues. Which of these issues really stand out for you that you think that it's of importance and need to be critically looked into?
Well, quite honestly, all are important. All are quite important. I tell you why I say that. Imo, for example, in the current governor's petition, I wouldn't say people didn't take it seriously, but people had forgotten about it. They thought the main challenge were from those people who came first and second. They thought the main challenge Wonsu of the APP then, Mr. Wonsu, was the main challenger because he came second. He was runner-up to Ihedioha. So a lot of people were concentrating more on those ones and think when the thing where those petitions were disposed of, say, oh, that's it. Not knowing that somebody who came fourth might also have a successful petition, as it turned out it happened. What stands out? A lot of things stand out. So we cannot rule out anything at all. But one, what is the effect of technology? What role did it play? Is it mandatory? What is the effect when there's non-compliance with the IReV? And people don't realize that different processes, not just the IReV, people concentrate more on the IReV, but the IReV is actually just one stage in that collation process. As you said in your opener, is there INEC saying, or maybe the process known to law is the manual collation? Is that correct? These are all the issues the courts will have to sieve through. There's the issue of the vice presidential candidate, taking the Peter Obi petition. The issue of the vice presidential candidate. Can you be, well, Section 35 of the Electoral Act says you cannot be nominated for 2 different constituencies or by 2 different political parties. Those things are clear. And it is alleged that the vice presidential candidate, Shetima, was nominated for 2 different constituencies. One, the Central District in Borno, and the second one is the presidential constituency. The whole of Nigeria is one constituency, and his Central District in Borno is another constituency. You cannot be nominated at the same time for the same election for 2 constituencies. So the issue is that
the electoral law says in that area, says Section 35, it says where a candidate knowingly allows himself to be nominated by more than one political party or in more than one constituency, his nomination shall be void. So which of the, because there are 2 nominations there involved, is it the earlier one or the latter one? It's not explicitly stated here.
Yeah, there are two angles to it. One, have you been nominated by 2 political parties? That's not the allegation. That's the first one. The second one, there are 2 issues there. Second complaint is that, have you been nominated for 2 different constituencies? And from what I've seen in the media, from the petitions, they attached the nomination form as a senatorial candidate. And we also know that it was returned as a vice presidential candidate. So that is the issue the tribunal will have to sieve through. That's another very important issue. But the issue is this. I think I've seen some of the issues being canvassed, and part of the defense is this. If he withdrew before his nomination, the tribunal will now have to look at it. Does that apply or it doesn't apply? If he has withdrawn, successfully withdrew from the senatorial election, then could he be nominated for the vice presidential? Probably so. So now it's a question of proof. You cannot be nominated for both positions at the same time. So were you able to, can you show that, yes, I was nominated for the senatorial district election, but I withdrew before I submitted the form as a vice presidential candidate, not forgetting that there was a placeholder. What now has become called a placeholder.
The politicians have brought it.
Was there an overlap, or there was a distinction? There was a distinct time frame between his withdrawal and, again, you also have to prove that he was nominated for the central district as well. So these are some of the issues that
the issue exactly that the lawyers need to argue is whether or not there are two valid nominations by the same political party at the same time with INEC. And those who are also argue...
Not 2 political parties.
No, one. The law says by more than one political party.
That is one, but that's not the case. It's the second, I read that, the second aspect of it, for 2 different constituencies.
By more than one political party or in more than one constituency.
That's the bit that happening.
So there are 2 scenarios played in that section alone.
Yes, in that section,
2 scenarios.
Yes.
Nomination by 2 political parties.
That's correct.
And nominations by 1 political party, but in 2 constituencies.
Correct.
So, but the lawyers need to prove whether or not there are 2 nominations that are valid at the same time.
That's correct.
But people will argue that, look, is the onus not on INEC to take action when such thing? This is not the first time we've seen, in the case of Atiku Abubakar, he was already a governorship candidate in Adamawa State.
He was not a candidate.
He was elected. He was elected, yes, actually.
Elected governor.
In the case of Goodluck Jonathan, in Bayelsa, before he came to be the running mate of the late President Yaradua.
Yes.
So we've seen this kind of scenario, but this was a pre-election issue. This was not an election. I mean, this didn't happen after the election.
No, we need to explain those. They're not the same. In the case of Atiku Abubakar won the election. First of all, there was no constitution in existence at that time. After the reconstitution, after the establishment of INEC met with political associations and said, look, what's the roadmap? How do we move forward? And it was agreed at those meetings, that, look, okay, we will not, there's no constitution in place. So there has to be a legal framework to guide us. So they agreed that each election will have a separate decree, there was no military rule, to guide the process. And that's exactly what was done in that case. There was a Decree 17 which established INEC. And then there was a decree for local government elections, which was conducted by INEC. There was a decree for state assembly elections. There was a decree for national, and there was a decree for governorship presidential elections. So each one had, in this particular case, so under the decree for governorship election, Atiku Abubakar was nominated and won the election as governor of Adamawa State.
State, yeah.
Now, the issue was that could he also be, and later on, President Obasanjo took him as his vice presidential candidate. And the court case went to court, by the way. What should happen to the seat he was vacating as governor? And A.B. Mahmood, the former president of the NBA, who is handling this on behalf of INEC, represented INEC in that case where INEC was taken to court over who should be, what should happen. Should his deputy just step in, or should there be a by-election and everything else? The case went all the way to Supreme Court, and Supreme Court said, no, the deputy can't step in. That's how that was resolved. So that's a slightly different. First of all, the law was different, and it's different from now.
So this was a development
much subsequent development. Then the Bayelsa case, it's similar to this, but the difference was that you, as a governor, you can contest any position. As a senator, the deputy senate president contested the governorship of Delta State, for example. The law doesn't forbid that. You are nominated, you are cleared, you have already been elected. As an elected official, you can contest any other position you so choose. That's possible as well.
So interesting scenario playing out. But the issue of Section 838 of the INEC guidelines, which has caused a lot of furore now, as we're seeing, the electronic transmission of result. So it says, on completion of all the polling units voting and result procedures, the presiding officer shall, and one, electronically transmit or transfer the result of the polling unit direct to the collation system as prescribed by the Commission. 2, use the beavers to upload a scanned copy of the Form EC8A to the INEC result viewing portal IReV as prescribed by the Commission. 3, take the beavers and the original copy of each of the forms in tamper-evident envelope to the registration area and ward collation officer in the company of security agents. The polling agents may accompany the presiding officer to the RA Ward Collation Center. Correct. Those are the provisions of... So some people will ask the validity of the INEC regulation, or how strong in the body of our laws. There's the Constitution, there's the electoral law, and the INEC regulation. Give us a sense of what this means altogether.
Yes, there's a hierarchy of laws. Absolutely. And of course, as you rightly pointed out, the Constitution is supreme. The Constitution says so, it is supreme. All other laws, guidelines, regulations derive their strength, their authority, their existence to the Constitution. It's the ground norm, it's the fountain of all other laws. And so because of that, the importance of that is that if it has made provision for cover the field, if it has made provision, no other law can try to expand it, except the Constitution says you can expand these powers, for example. No other law can do that. Next to it is an statute, the Acts of the National Assembly, because it's presumed that National Assembly are elected by the people. So they are the people's representatives. They make laws for the country, assented to by the president, who's also elected. Then you have regulations and guidelines. Regulations and guidelines are made by people who generally are not elected. They're parts of the executive. They are appointed. So INEC, for example, is composed of appointed people. Nobody in INEC is elected. So that being so, they are not direct representatives of the people. So any regulation, any legal instrument they make is subservient to that made by the representatives of the people, which is the National Assembly. So in the hierarchy, there should be no conflict between its regulations, guidelines made by the Commission or any executive body. There should be no conflict with the statute, which is a superior instrument. There should be no conflict. And then below guidelines and regulations, you have, because guidelines are bylaws, you cannot conflict with the substantive, with the major law. Then you have manuals and other procedural instruments that the Commission can use.
But how solid is the regulation? Because this section that I read out, and including section 48 of the regulation, because INEC prepare a regulation ahead of every election, I assume that there is, except if there is a need for changes in it, but there is a regulation of 2022 which was supposed to guide the operation of the election of 2023. How solid and how solid can this regulation stand because of the controversy that has been generated? Is INEC mandated? Because INEC has, in its position at the petition, has said, look, it's not mandatory for us to have done what you are asking us to do. the IReV, it was supposed to be a subsidiary.
No, that is editor's choice. We have to be very careful about that. You have to quote what INEC said.
Absolutely.
And a lot of what I have seen are editor's language. Now, so while you're looking for that, let me explain.
No, go ahead, please.
Good. So you see, this issue is that, what is the effect of it? The Electoral Act says this procedure for collation should be left to INEC. As empowered INEC, you transmit results as the INEC provides. So it has left INEC with a, discretion. And with that discretion, INEC has now made regulations to say, how do we determine this? They've now made regulations. That's why you say paragraph 38 and 48 of the guidelines, amongst other provisions of the guidelines, are supposed to guide these issues. I think section 60, subsection 2, makes issues of leaving the discretion to INEC about how things should be dealt with.
Of the Constitution, right?
No, of the Electoral Act.
Electoral, yeah.
I think it's
section 60, right?
I believe it's section 60. Now, so to be transmitted, 60 check subsection 5
Counting
thereof.
of votes, recount post-election.
So transfer results in the manner prescribed, section 60, subsection 5. Section 60, subsection 5.
Yeah. The presiding officer shall transfer the result, including total number of accredited voters,
shall transfer
and the results of the ballot in a manner as
prescribed by INEC. In a manner as prescribed by INEC. So how does INEC prescribe the manner? You go to the regulations. So you see that it flows directly from the Electoral Act itself. Having said that, you go further into the Electoral Act. You now see that there are certain protocols to be observed, not just in the regulations, but also in the Electoral Act itself. In a manner to prescribe. What is the manner prescribed? You just read paragraph 38 of the guidance. That is part of the manner prescribed.
But that is rock solid. That cannot be.
You cannot fault it because it doesn't contradict the Electoral Act.
Yes.
It derives, it flows.
So the place of IReV is stamped here in the electoral law, isn't it?
In a manner prescribed, and the manner prescribed. No, you see, you're jumping the gun.
No. He says, look, Mr. Oluwale,
yes.
He says, use the beavers. Stemming from the section 38. The subsection 2 says,
yes.
Use the beavers to upload a scanned copy of the E68A to the INEC result viewing portal as prescribed by the Commission. So there is actually...
But read the previous...
It says electronically transmit or transfer the result of the polling unit direct to the collation system.
Collation system. And that's the mistake a lot of people make. Collation system is where you should transmit results to first. And then the IReV. People don't seem to get that, and
so does it mean that the IReV is not cast in stone?
I don't know.
So the collation, no,
the
point
is plain, simple.
I don't know
that's cast in stone, but it doesn't say so.
No, you made reference. Electronically transmit or transfer the result of the polling unit direct to the collation system as prescribed by the Commission.
And then
collation system.
Goes on. After you do that,
is the collation system a manual process?
Wait, now it's after you do that.
Yeah.
But you just read it. Transmit or transfer.
Electronically.
Electronically, that's the point. Electronically transmit or transfer to the collation system. That's first place. Before it goes to IReV. Now read the second one. Without goes to
use
the IReV.
Use the beavers to upload a scanned copy of the E68A to the IReV result viewing portal as prescribed.
That's after doing the first one. And people always jump to conclusion, oh, it's just IReV. No. There's what they call the collation system. And my understanding of it, the collation system is probably the back end of the IReV. It should, it's like a mirror. It should replicate that. But first of all, take it to the collation system. And then later on go to the IReV. That's what the regulation says. It's not me making it up. You just read it. I'm happy you read it. So when people say, oh, I didn't see it in IReV, I didn't see the IReV. The law did not say transfer to IReV first. It's transfer to the collation system. After the collation system, then you take it to IReV. But I think the language used is mandatory, by the way. That's my own honest view. But the collation system is different from the IReV according to the regulations. Because if you look at disputes, for example, I think if you check, if you have time, your producer will check section 64 of the act itself.
Electoral.
Yes.
60 what?
64.
Yeah. Which says that's
64. Let's check
64. Okay.
Yes.
It says a collation officer or returning officer at an election shall collate and announce the result of an election subject to his or her verification and confirmation that the number of accredited voters stated on the collated result are correct and consistent with the number of accredited voters recorded and transmitted directly from polling units under Section 47 of this Act, and B, the votes stated on the collated result are correct and consistent with the vote or result recorded and transmitted directly from polling unit under Section 64 of this Act.
Correct. So there are two things there. First of all, accreditation figures. Accreditation figures have been entered into the manual result sheet. So you look at the manual result sheet. Does it tally? I think it's correct and consistent, the word used by the law. Correct, first of all, and consistent with that in the beavers. So you must physically examine the beavers to look at it. And then the second thing you do is now look at the scores. Party A, Party B, Party C, are they correct? Is total correct? Are they correct? And are they consistent with what has been electronically transmitted from the polling units?
So, I mean, this is where I would love us to anchor.
Okay.
Mr. Mahmood, in his petition for INEC, when he responded to his reply, says, quote, there was no collation system of the third respondent, which is INEC, to which polling unit results were required to be transmitted by the presiding officers. A prescribed mode of collation was manual collation of the various forms EC8A, EC8B, EC8C, EC8D, and EC8E in the presidential election, the electoral umpire.
Can we pause and break it down?
Absolutely.
Well, read the first sentence.
It says that there was no collation system of the third respondent, which is INEC, to which polling unit results were required to be transmitted by the presiding officers.
No collation system, but now the tribunal will have to determine, in view of the law.
It now says the prescribed mode of collation was manual collation.
That is also, I find very interesting. Prescribed mode is manual collation. Well, you just read that, and that's actually what it says. It didn't say you should collate electronically. There's nowhere in the law, nowhere in the guidelines you see electronic. Go back to your 64.4. Go back to 64.4. Go back.
A collation officer or returning officer at an election shall collate and announce the result of an election subject to his or her verification and confirmation.
Verification and confirmation. That's what is required with it electronically transmitted. But quite rightly, collation is still now
manual.
Give me from this point, from that point,
EC8B, EC8C, and EC8D.
But before you start that process, you must go to the electronic ones and say, are these figures consistent? Yes. It doesn't say start collating from the beavers. It doesn't say start collating from the transmitted results. It says start collation. Before you start collation, look at this, and the figures are the same. Now you gather all the EC8As together and start. So in that sense, it's a manual process.
Interesting. INEC is spending several billions of naira on that. They've actually allocated, I can't remember, is it 3 billion or something?
I read it on social media, but I don't know whether that's an official statement of the commission. But yes, 3 billion naira for defending
its own petitions. And
in fact, expenses, not just the defense, not just the lawyers' fees, but the logistics of moving things around, of certification, all sorts of logistics associated with post-election litigation issues.
I mean, are you one of those who subscribe that the courts should televise these proceedings?
I have mixed, quite honestly, I have mixed feelings about it. You don't want to turn it into a circus, into a jamboree. Even in the US, where a lot of states allow televised issues, you find the O.J. Simpson matter, for example. That's one in recent memory, and the controversies arising